The TikTok ban is looming, and we're going to talk about it. We wrote just a little bit, but I have a feeling it'll be a pretty big highlight story. We're going to have a lot of thoughts on this one. Some critiques of Session Messenger, some privacy wins in the politics section for once, some open source news, and a lot more. Should be a pretty packed week. Welcome to Surveillance Report 210, where we are dedicated to keeping you private and secure and safe with the latest news in the past week. I'm Henry from Techlore.
I'm Nathan from The New Oil.
Real quick though, before we get into the highlight story, we have our sponsor, EasyOptOuts. We've talked a lot about data removal services in the past and how they can be a helpful part of automating that obnoxious process of trying to get your information off people searching websites. There was some Consumer Reports research done not too long ago that showed a lot of these services were ineffective, but EasyOptOuts was one of the best performing ones that they now recommend. One of the researchers who did that now recommends EasyOptOuts, and the best part is they're only $20 a year, so not only is it shown to be one of the most effective services, but it's also one of the most economical services. The way they do it is also a little bit better because they don't just send removal requests to anybody. They only look and send requests to data brokers that already have your information. So that's a really good thing. It lowers your overhead. So even if you do implement some manual stuff, you can use EasyOptOuts to pretty much speed through a lot of the manual work as well. It's run by just two guys, so there's not a ton of employees or contractors who manage your data. We've talked to both of them behind the scenes, and they're both great guys, and they've even done public interviews if you want to go watch those. They also ask for minimal information, and they also have business plans as well, and they make cancellation really easy. I was previously using a different service and I migrated to EasyOptOuts, and it's been super easy, and that's currently what I'm using. In addition to some manual removals here and there, I think EasyOptOuts is probably the best way to go. So really great sponsor, and we're really happy that they are supporting us, and go check them out down in the description. So we're going to cover some context on the TikTok ban, and then we'll get into a lot more of our personal thoughts and takeaways for all of you. SCOTUS upheld this ban. Trump is considering reversing this when he takes office Monday, and ByteDance is threatening to go dark in the US on Sunday when this is published. The ban would also apply to apps like RedNote. So this is still currently unfolding at the time we're recording. We record these on Friday, so by the time you watch this, there might already be updates.
Future Nate here. So it should go without saying, we recorded this Friday night, and then Saturday night, TikTok stopped working, and by Sunday, it was back. It's been a really crazy weekend. So apologies for some of this information being a little out of date and you guys having the benefit of hindsight. But for the record, and I think Henry would agree with this, I don't think this really invalidates any of the stuff we talked about this week. For starters, the TikTok ban has only been extended by 75 days. So there's a possibility we might see this play out again in the future. And second, all the things that we've said about privacy concerns and decentralization, data concerns, all that kind of stuff still stands. Nothing has functionally changed. There's just more time to see this play out. Apologies that you guys are kind of getting to look back on this part and laugh a little bit, but hopefully you can still take away the important parts that are timeless.
At the heart of this debate is China's 2017 national intelligence law, which compels all Chinese companies to assist the government with national security matters. This means any company, like TikTok's parent company ByteDance, to RedNote's parent company, can be forced to share user data with Chinese authorities, even if that data is from users in the US or elsewhere. And this is at least what's cited as the reason for the national security concerns. RedNote, for people who don't know, combines the features of TikTok, Instagram, and Pinterest while offering short videos, product recommendations, and e-commerce functionality. And TikTok is officially being banned in the US on January 19th, which should be either the day of or the day before this episode goes live. So you'll know what happens by the time you listen to this. But many users are already migrating to RedNote, but it's important to note that these apps are notorious for collecting vast amounts of personal information. You might be asking just how much, and the answer, along with every other social media platform, is a lot. According to the privacy policy, even if you just download and open the app but never create an account, TikTok will collect your GPS location data, IP addresses, and device identifiers, search and browsing histories, messages, and in-app interactions. And on TikTok, even users' keystrokes have reportedly been tracked through its in-app browser. We actually covered this story a long time ago. It wasn't just keystrokes, but it literally injected JavaScript into the in-app browser to collect your passwords. I don't know if that's been fixed already, but that was a serious issue when it was announced. Similar issues could also still exist in RedNote, though its practices have not been as widely studied because it's a newer thing that people aren't as involved with. So we don't know if every privacy concern from TikTok will carry over to RedNote, but the concerns from TikTok are very much legitimate, and the same practices exist on other social media apps, including RedNote. Now, RedNote's privacy policy, which is written primarily in Mandarin, indicates that the app collects a range of user data, including location information, browsing habits, and device identifiers. Although camera use might involve the processing of personal or facial data, the policy does not explicitly describe this as biometric information or detail how such data is stored. Furthermore, like other Chinese-owned platforms, they comply with Chinese cybersecurity law, which requires companies to store data locally and provide government access upon request, raising additional privacy concerns. So we want to start by just saying all social media apps, for the most part, are privacy invasive unless they specifically are aimed to not be that way. Facebook, Instagram, everything, anything from Meta. We have Twitter, we have X, we have even Blue Sky. These are not inherently privacy respecting platforms. And so everyone should just be aware that these platforms have these issues. And that's always where we start. I think my biggest issue with this whole TikTok ban is that it's based on global politics and not on protecting individual citizens. If someone is an American, why does it matter which country of origin their data is scooped up by? If their data is scooped up by Facebook, that is just as damaging to the individual as their data being scooped up by a Chinese company or a French company or a South African company. It doesn't really matter the source, especially because right now the way data sharing works is data can be shared easily and it's a global problem. So if your data is leaked to a Chinese company, that Chinese company might contract with a French company who contracts back with Facebook anyway. So this is a big issue and it's a very short-sighted way of dealing with things. And I think the really scary thing about this is that for the first time that I can think of, the US is using a very direct and public way of censoring a website. Never in my life have I not been able to access a website because the US government blocked it. That is something that here in the US, a lot of people would say, that sounds like a Chinese concept or a Russian concept. But it's happening here. We don't know if it's officially going to go through. A lot can happen in the next 48, 72 hours. But I think people should be really terrified about this. And I also published a personal thought on this, which is right now, a lot of states are requiring KYC, if not outright banning pornography. And we're also now going to maybe see a federal TikTok ban. And the first reaction is to use a VPN to bypass these restrictions. But what happens when the US government cracks down on VPNs? This is what we see in other countries, is they ban websites, and then people use VPNs to get around them, and then the VPNs get removed from the App Store, or they start employing tactics to ban VPN traffic. I don't think the US is immune to those issues. And if you think it is, I would love your optimism for things, actually, because I think this is a really scary situation with a very dangerous precedent. And I think the only person who's actually really excited about this is probably Mark Zuckerberg, because he now, through indirect methods and a lot of lobbying, has probably very much assisted in this process of getting TikTok out of his main market share. I don't think any of those should be really hot takes. I think that this is a pretty concerning issue. One thing, just a message to people, I understand everybody's frustration. I don't really use TikTok. I think we have a TikTok through Techlore. I publish to once every 6 months when I try to. But for people who actively use TikTok, I understand the frustration. I know it sucks. But also, please try to think about where your data is ending up, regardless of which social media platform you're on. So if you're looking at alternatives to TikTok, I do know, what is it called? Loops. Loops is like the federated open source alternative to TikTok. But just think about the alternative you move to and try to find something that is at least a little bit more privacy respecting, or at least allows you to use it in a more privacy respecting way. And the last thing is, one of our friends, Sean O'Brien, put together a front end. It's called StickTalk, which ideally, even if TikTok is banned, will still let you view TikTok videos through the front end.
We've been talking about this a lot off air in like group chats and stuff. And I think we're kind of in the same boat of like, I don't think either of us are really huge fans of TikTok in general. The New Oil also has a TikTok that I've been using on and off. I just haven't really had time to make content in general. I still haven't even scripted my next video, and it's been like, God, what, 2 months now? Something like that. Surprisingly, there was a pretty receptive audience. But even so, yeah, like TikTok was never my cup of tea. This concerns me on a lot of levels, and I think you covered most of them. One of them is the censorship angle. Like, this is really a serious case of US censorship. And it's very funny. I remember reading the first draft of the TikTok ban I haven't read any of the subsequent ones because the first one was like, I don't know, 10 pages or so. And now the latest one is probably like well into the triple digits. They just get longer and longer and dumber. Because the funny thing I remember is when I was reading the first one, it was so obvious, to borrow the parlance of TikTok. Tell me you're trying to ban TikTok without telling me you're trying to ban TikTok.
It was like, oh, the app must have this color logo with this exact number of users, and it must originate from this town in China. And like it had like all these random requirements to specifically isolate.
Like, you're exaggerating, but not by much. He's really not. It's insane how it was like so obvious that they were trying to ban Chinese and Russian and Iranian owned apps without affecting any American apps like Meta and Amazon and stuff like that. And for the record, we hear you on for those of you who are like, no, but it's worse because it's China. Like, and we've said this in the past, like, we understand that argument. National security is a legitimate thing, and I think that's a fair argument to an extent. But what I have issues with is the way it's being disproportionately applied. Like, I said this in the past, Verizon is not a Chinese company. AT&T is not a Chinese company. And China still backdoored them and got every single SMS, MMS, I think even voice call sent across their networks. EFF put out a statement about the ban right after the Supreme Court upheld it. They straight up said this information, or the vast majority of it, is freely available for foreign adversaries to acquire through completely legal means. And actually, we covered it about 6 months ago. The U.S. government reauthorized Section 702 of FISA, which is what allows the NSA to spy on Americans. Sorry, allows the NSA to spy on foreign blah, 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 whatever. It allows the NSA to spy on Americans. We all know what it does, for those of us who are familiar. One of the Congress people who voted in favor of reauthorizing it, he's like, well, our enemies can just go freely buy this data. So if our agents need to go get a warrant, that puts us on unequal footing. Instead of just going for the obvious, like, it's like noticing that a lot of people in America are getting their hands chopped off for some reason and just going, well, let's just chop everybody's hands off at birth and put everybody on equal footing. Why don't we look into why half the people are getting their hands chopped off and fix that problem? We refuse to just look at the problem, which is the data is falling into enemy hands. Well, how does it do that? Sure, TikTok is one way, but also data brokers, loose privacy laws, companies not playing by the rule. Well, there are no rules. So just companies like Meta just hoovering up all this data, not protecting it for crap. Guys, there's a whole Wikipedia page just listing Meta's privacy scandals. And it's a long page. They're dancing around the real issue. And this is a Band-Aid at best. And it's a very slippery slope. I think you said that too. That's a concern that I definitely share, is like, okay, fine, quote unquote, fine. You ban this what app? Well, now, like you said, we're going to have to ban VPNs to keep people from getting to that app. And now we're going to have to ban Tor because people stopped using VPNs. And there's really just no winning here, because like everybody started going to Red Note, and also Red Note would fall under the TikTok ban anyways, because it's not technically a TikTok ban. It's a ban on anything owned by a hostile government. PixelFed is apparently a pretty popular one that's gaining some traction, which I think is cool, but PixelFed is more like Instagram. I don't think it does videos.
I'm on PixelFed, actually. I actually think it's really nice. It's a gorgeous interface. It's a pretty, of all the federated alternatives, PixelFed's my favorite of all of them, actually.
Obviously, there's like meta platforms like, you know, Reels.
I think that's what's so upsetting. I think the only person who's like genuinely excited about this story is Mark Zuckerberg. Like, the amount of competitive advantage that Zuckerberg got from this news is just insane. Like, they're already one of the most powerful companies, and they were finally getting destroyed by a competitor that wasn't an American competitor. And now the government just banned that competitor from existing in the US. This should go across the political aisle, because if you're somebody who believes in regulation and like government intervention, you should be fully in support of privacy regulation and that handling the situation. If you're somebody who's max, like, you know, laissez-faire, we don't like the government, you do your own thing, then you don't just ban a competitor the moment it's big enough to cause issues because it's not benefiting your country.
Real quick, just to kind of speak to what you were saying towards the end there. Yeah, so some people tried Red Note. That's applicable to the Chinese ban. Some people are going back to Reels and Facebook. That's a dumpster fire. I stand by that statement. We all know about X. And also, it's a different platform. You know, it doesn't do the same thing. You mentioned Loops. So Loops is in beta. It's in public beta right now. And quick interjection here from future Nate. So originally when we recorded this audio, I said that Loops had a lot of problems and was not really ready for mainstream adoption. But to be honest, I hadn't been on Loops in a hot minute. This morning, I re-added it to my phone because I got a new phone. And looking through it, it's actually developed quite a bit. to the point where I felt like I should issue this update. I'm still not sure it's ready for mainstream use, but for example, originally I said follows don't mean anything and it's all just chronological videos with no separate feed. That's no longer true. As of this morning, which is Sunday on the 19th, there is a follow feed and there's also a For You page. And I don't know if the For You is actually algorithmic or if it's just chronological. So it's still missing some things, like it's missing a global search. It's not open source yet. It's not federated yet. But with the addition of a following page, I think that actually does make it a little bit more ready for mainstream use. Definitely not totally there. I could see if a lot of people aren't ready to embrace it. But like I said, this is a big enough update that I felt like I should kind of give an update and walk back my former comments. So yeah, Loops is definitely worth a look. Even if it may not be right for anybody, it's still worth checking out. And for the record, as many of you know, between the time we recorded this video and it came out, TikTok went dark and then came back, and we're just going to kind of wait and see where things go before we make any further comments. But I just wanted to throw that out there. Obviously, like with how fast this situation is evolving, even by the time I record this update, things may have changed before we hit publish. So just try to give us some grace, please. And then, yeah, the closest one is, like I said, my wife has been trying Pixel Fed. She really likes it, but yeah, this is really frustrating for a lot of people. My wife is super upset. Like it's not just an app for her, it's community. It's like she's made a lot of friends. There's a lot of content on there. There is some good content. Like I am not a TikTok hater like a lot of people. There is some educational stuff on there. There is some really cool stuff on there. There is some stuff that's genuinely actually funny. But from a privacy perspective, there are privacy concerns. There are national security concerns that I think they're valid. But again, to repeat myself, this is a Band-Aid. This is not the solution. And this is opening doors in a really bad way. It's like, again, not to be political, but Roe v. Wade, regardless of where you stand on the abortion thing, that was not the hill to die on. It is going to come back to screw us over because Roe v. Wade was predicated on privacy from the government. That was literally, you can go look it up. That was the ruling. The government does not have a right to tell a person what to do with their body. And now that we've repealed that, that means that logic went out the window with it. Regardless of how you feel about China and national security, this is not the solution. This is a slippery slope. It should have been solved a different way. Okay, I think we beat that horse to death again. And maybe again. So we'll move on to data breaches now, and I think we just have a few this week. First up, OneBlood confirms personal data stolen in a July ransomware attack. So OneBlood is a supplier of blood to over 250 hospitals across the United States, and the attack is causing delays in blood collection, testing, and distribution, leading to, quote, a critical blood shortage in some clinics. Although blood collection centers typically collect more information, such as phone numbers, emails, and physical addresses, demographic data, and medical history, the exposed data is limited to names and social security numbers. The number of people impacted was not disclosed.
Label giant Avery says website was hacked to steal credit cards. And Avery, for those who don't know, is an American company that produces and sells self-adhesive labels, apparel branding elements, and printing services. This is following an internal investigation by digital forensic experts. It was discovered that threat actors had planted a card skimmer on their website. And as a result, payment information was pretty much exfiltrated between July 18th and December 9th, 2024. It included first and last names, billing and shipping addresses, email addresses, phone numbers, payment card information, CVV codes, and expiration dates and purchase amounts.
Wolf Haldenstein law firm says 3.5 million impacted by data breach. So this is an American law firm founded in 1888 that operates multiple offices across the US, including New York, Chicago, San Diego, and Nashville. The incident took place on December 13th, 2023. But the firm says the data analysis and digital forensic complications severely delayed the completion of its investigation. This data breach impacted full name, social security number, employee, ID number, medical diagnosis, and medical claim information. Despite the lack of ability to directly reach impacted individuals, complimentary credit monitoring coverage will be offered to those who believe they are impacted.
And the last data breach of the week, Hotelier, data breach exposes information, hotel reservations of millions. So this is previously known as My Digital Office, which is now Hotelier, and it's a cloud-based hotel management solution used by over 10,000 hotels worldwide to make reservations, transactions, nightly reports, and invoicing. The breach first allegedly occurred in July 2024, with continued access through October, with the threat actors claiming to have stolen 8 terabytes. Yes, with a T, of data from Amazon AWS S3 buckets. Using this access, it included millions of documents belonging to Marriott that were in S3 buckets. The small samples seen by Bleeping Computer include a broad range of data, including hotel guest reservations, transactions, employee emails, and other internal data. Some of the personal information included names, addresses, phone numbers, and emails. Stolen data also includes information from Hyatt, Hilton, and Wyndham. Hunt says that despite the large set, he found 1.3 million unique email addresses, as many are repeated.
Now we'll go into companies, and we just have one story here. This is kind of a quick one, and it's really just kind of a heads up thing. Google is now beginning to require JavaScript for Google search. In an email to TechCrunch, a company spokesperson claimed that the change is intended to quote unquote better protect Google search against malicious activity, such as bots and spam, and to improve the overall search experience for users. The spokesperson noted that without JavaScript, many search features won't work properly and that the quality of search results may be degraded. Many major websites rely on JavaScript. According to a 2020 GitHub survey, 95% of sites around the web employ the language in some form, but as users on social media point out, Google's decision to require it could add friction for those who rely on accessibility tools, which can struggle with certain JavaScript implementations. JavaScript is also prone to security vulnerabilities, and this is why we're talking about it. In its 2024 annual security survey, tech company Datadog found that around 70% of JavaScript services are vulnerable to one or more critical or high-severity vulnerabilities introduced by a third-party software library.
Really quick, some research. We're mostly covering it because we want to keep you guys all updated on things, but it's pretty preliminary. There is a security researcher who put out a blog about Session, the messenger who does like its own version of onion routing, and it's supposed to be a more private / anonymous approach to how Signal does things. A security researcher said they don't like it. They detailed all the reasons why they didn't like some of the things that Session did. And then Session made a response, kind of debating why they don't think these are actual issues, or they think that they're not issues altogether. And now the original author at the time of recording, again, we record these earlier, at the time of recording, the original author who gave the complaints claims to be working on a proof of concept to validate their claims.
All right, everyone. Future Nate here with yet another update. I'm sorry this episode has taken so long to get to you guys. The original researcher has posted yet another follow-up. I don't really know how long they want to keep this going, but either way, we're not really in the business of like covering the back and forth constant drama and arguments, for lack of a better way to put it. So I'm just going to leave a link to a Privacy Guides forum post where all this seems to be unfolding. And if you guys want to keep updated with that, go ahead and subscribe to that. If there's any major developments in this or any serious resolution that is worthy of being in a future episode, we will definitely include that. But otherwise, I think I speak for Henry when I say we're just going to leave this here and move on.
That'll take us into politics. We have quite a few stories this week, and actually most of them I think are pretty good, at least for now. We'll start with a new jam-packed Biden executive order that tackles cybersecurity, AI, and more. 4 days before he leaves office, U.S. President Joe Biden has issued a sweeping cybersecurity directive ordering improvements to the way the government monitors its networks, buys software, uses AI, and punishes foreign hackers. The order requires software vendors to submit proof that they follow secure development practices, building on a mandate that debuted in 2022 in response to Biden's first cyber executive order. The Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, or CISA, would be tasked with double-checking these security attestations and working with vendors to fix any problems. To put some teeth behind the requirement, the White House Office of National Cyber Director is, quote, encouraged to refer attestations that fail validation to the Attorney General, unquote, for potential investigation and prosecution. The order gives the Department of Commerce 8 months to assess the most commonly used cyber practices in the business community and issue guidance based on them. Shortly thereafter, those practices would become mandatory for companies seeking to do business with the government. The directive also kicks off updates to the National Institute of Standards and Technology, or NIST's, secure software development guidance. Another part of the directive focuses on the protection of cloud platforms' authentication keys, the compromise of which opened the door for China's theft of government emails from Microsoft servers and its recent supply chain hack of the Treasury Department. Commerce and the General Services Administration have 270 days to develop guidelines for key protection, which would then have to become requirements for cloud vendors within 60 days. To protect federal agencies from attacks that rely on flaws in Internet of Things gadgets, the order sets a January 4th, 2027 deadline for agencies to purchase only consumer IoT devices that carry the newly launched U.S. Cyber Trustmark label, and I believe we talked about that last week. Another part of the order boosts CISA's ability to watch for cyber attacks across the government by tapping into security software that other agencies operate. It's an attempt to reduce visibility gaps that adversaries have successfully exploited in many intrusions, especially the 2020 SolarWinds hack. The order requires agencies to give CISA direct access to their security platforms and to allow CISA to conduct unannounced threat hunting activities on their networks. Biden also wants Department of Homeland Security, Commerce, and the National Science Foundation to prioritize research on topics like how humans and AI tools can coordinate to analyze cyber threat data, how to ensure the security of AI-generated code, how to design secure AI models, and how to prevent and recover from cyber incidents involving AI systems. Other provisions in the executive order require government recommendations for securing open source software, updates to cyber requirements in contracts for space systems, contracting changes to ensure that new technology supports post-quantum cryptography, and the use of encryption in DNS technologies, email systems, and voice and video conferencing platforms. The order also lowers the bar for the government to be able to sanction people who launch cyber attacks on U.S. critical infrastructure.
Ministers mull allowing private firms to make profit from NHS data in the AI push. On Monday, they announced a push to open up the government to AI innovation, including allowing companies to use anonymized patient data to develop new treatments, drugs, and diagnostic tools. A partner of this law firm said the potential benefits of using NHS data to train AI models are indeed significant, with promising prospects for research advancements, improved patient outcomes, and cost savings. However, we must not overlook the substantial data privacy, confidentiality, and security challenges that accompany this initiative. So this is very early on. There's not too much of a story here yet.
On a similar note, the UK plans to ban public sector organizations from paying ransomware hackers. The UK's Home Office launched a consultation on Tuesday that proposes a targeted ban on ransomware payments. Under the proposal, public sector bodies, including local councils, schools, and NHS trusts, would be banned from making payments to ransomware hackers, which the government says would, quote, strike at the heart of the cybercriminal business model, unquote. The newly outlined UK government proposals would also make it a criminal offense for critical infrastructure organizations, such as businesses in the energy and communication sectors, to make ransomware payments in the event of a ransomware attack. The UK government departments are already banned from paying ransomware gangs. The proposals also detail a new mandatory reporting regime for ransomware incidents, which would require that cyber attack victims who are not covered by the ban report the incident to the government. Another proposal suggests a program aimed at preventing the payment of ransoms to sanctioned entities, which the government will have the power to block.
A lawsuit from Texas is suing Allstate because they used GasBuddy and other apps to quietly track driving behavior. They used its data broker subsidiary to steal data from apps like GasBuddy, Rootly, and Life360. This complaint includes a phone's geolocation data, accelerometer data, magnetometer data, and gyroscopic data, which monitors details such as the phone's altitude, longitude, latitude, bearing, GPS, time, speed, and accuracy. With that data, plus in some cases data from connected vehicles, Allstate could see when, how far, and for how long someone was driving, along with hard-braking events and whether a consumer picked up or opened their phone while traveling at certain speeds. Apparently, they used this data from more than 45 million people, then used that data to adjust rates. It also gathered direct car use data from Toyota, Lexus, Mazda, Chrysler, Dodge, Fiat, Jeep, Maserati, and Ram vehicles.
On a similar note, GM, or General Motors, is now banned from selling your driving data for 5 years. The FTC, where this ban comes from, has accused GM of using a, quote, misleading enrollment process to get vehicle owners to sign up for its OnStar connected vehicle service and smart driver feature. The automaker failed to disclose to customers that it was collecting their data, nor did GM seek out their consent to sell to third parties. After the Times exposed the practice, GM said it was discontinuing its OnStar smart driver program. The settlement also requires GM to obtain consent from customers before collecting their driving behavior data and allowing them to request and delete their data if they choose.
GDPR complaints filed against TikTok and Temu for sending user data to China. So this is from Noib, and they filed 6 complaints against TikTok, AliExpress, Shine, Temu, WeChat, and Xiaomi for unlawfully transferring European user data to China and infringing European Union's General Data Protection Regulation. In the documents, they highlight that China collects citizen data aggressively and processes it without restrictions, which is against their data protection law. The lawyer also stated that the companies have to comply with data access requests from the China state authorities without a justification or limiting the supply under certain conditions. Noib underlines that Xiaomi has previously admitted through public transparency reports that authorities in China can request and obtain. They pretty much get untethered access to this data. So in addition to this risk, Noib also mentions that European users have their data access requests ignored by the said companies, which constitutes a violation of the GDPR. These fines could reach a maximum of 1.75 and 1.35 billion respectively, and they demand immediate suspension of data transfers to China and to bring their data processing practices in alignment with requirements.
Indonesia plans minimum age for social media use. Minister, and I apologize if I mess this name up, Muta Hafid, did not say what the minimum age would be in Indonesia. Her remarks, made late on January 13th, came after she discussed the plan with President Prabowo Subianto. Internet penetration in Indonesia, a country of about 280 million people, reached 79.5% in 2024, according to a survey of 8,700 people. So basically 80% of those people are online now. The survey also showed 48% of children under 12 had access to the internet, with some respondents of that age group using Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. The survey showed internet penetration was 87% among Gen Z users, or those 12 to 27.
Free and open source. FOSS. Very quickly, there was some Proton drama. It's not really privacy security related, so we're not going to get into it in this podcast. It is somewhat political, but we're just making people aware of that, and we'll keep tabs on it if it becomes any actual privacy or security issue. So feel free to do your own research if you want to dig into that. Mastodon has announced transitioning to a nonprofit structure. So Mastodon is a decentralized social network, and they said they're moving over to this nonprofit structure, and details are yet to be finalized, but they will hand over management bits of the organization to the new entity and focus on the product strategy. They will be Europe-based, and that's pretty much it for now.
And our last FOSS story is a quick one that ties directly, well, sort of directly into the headline story again. Decentralized Instagram alternative PixelFed launches mobile apps. PixelFed was originally developed in 2018 by Daniel Supernault, who recently also created federated TikTok rival Loops. Similar to Instagram, PixelFed allows users to share and explore photos and videos, and you can send direct messages to others. They're probably not end-to-end encrypted, just FYI. However, unlike Instagram, PixelFed is ad-free, open source, decentralized, and defaults to chronological feeds, which are its selling point to users. The Android PixelFed launched just ahead of Tuesday's iOS app, and it only took 2 days to reach 10,000 downloads. The app is also now the #1 social app on Google Play in a number of markets, including the US. Supernault also said that 11,000 new users joined one of the top PixelFed instances, pixelfed.social, over the past 24 hours. That server alone has seen more than 78,000 posts on Tuesday alone.
Really quickly, this is a kind of a promo here. Techlore, we manage an open source app. It's called Plexus. It allows you to do ratings for apps, so you can check if an app works on a de-Googled operating system before you have to move over to one. And there was just a quick update for that app, so you can check it out. Pretty much version 2.1 fixed an issue with de-Googled devices incorrectly being identified as using microG. And we also added support for translating rating notes. It's through like an open source tool and it's pretty nifty. So check it out and update if you use Plexus. And please contribute apps as well. The more apps you can contribute to Plexus, the more useful it is for people who want to move to these operating systems.
That'll bring us into the Misfits, and we just have one quick story that I just wanted to signal boost for you guys because tax season is coming up. The headline says, "Scammers file first. Get your IRS identity protection PIN now." The IRS relaunched its Identity Protection Personal Identification Number, or IP PIN program this week, and all U.S. taxpayers are encouraged to enroll for added security against identity theft and fraudulent returns. An IP PIN is a 6-digit number assigned to a taxpayer that must be used when filing a tax return. This number is only valid for the current year, with a new one assigned each tax year. As this PIN is only known to you, your accountant if you're not self-filing, and the IRS, it prevents scammers from filing a tax return using your social security number and personal information. The IRS IP PIN program is even more critical this year, with over 100 million people's social security numbers exposed in the massive national public data breach, which we did cover.
And that is it for the week. So the TikTok ban is looming, and we talked about it a lot. So I think that might be the longest highlight story you might have ever done. Some critiques of Session Messenger, some privacy wins in the politics section, and more.
And in keeping with our tradition of handing off the sponsor segments each week, it's my turn to talk about EasyOptOuts. So we have really highlighted the value and convenience of having a service perform opt-outs for you. I want to reiterate to all the people in the comment section who don't trust these kind of companies, that's fine. You can do it yourself. But I'm sure you guys can attest, it's a lot of work. It really takes organization. You have to be on top of things. You have to really have the energy for it. And for some people, that is a tall order. So is this as good as doing it yourself? No, even they will admit that. Even the Consumer Reports research admits that. But it's pretty freaking close, and it's pretty affordable. It's $20 a year. Again, Consumer Reports did some research that you can go reference. They do not submit removal requests unless they find your data. So they're not just spamming your data out to data brokers that don't already have it. They make sure it's there. They are constantly adding new sites over time. They try to keep their overhead low. They don't have a lot of employees or contractors. In fact, last we checked, it's still just the 2 founders. So, they're not trying to run ads on all these websites. And Again, they don't run ads. They don't have any analytics on their website. And cancellation is easy. If you sign up for it and they send you, here's a list of places we found your data, and you're like, no, they missed a bunch of spots, you can request a refund. And again, they have business plans. So if you are a business owner and you want to offer this as a perk to your employees, be sure to contact them and they will work with you.
And that is it. So again, go ahead and check out our sponsor down in the description. We have other support methods down there if you like this podcast, and all links to all the stories can be found in the show notes. And if you have a story that you want covered, make sure to email it in on our website's email. And the final thing we want to ask is for you to share our podcast around. Make sure you're subscribed and give us a rating if you're listening from a platform where that's an option. Those ratings really help, and any reviews that you leave are good feedback for us. We want privacy to reach as many people as possible, and you can help us do that. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you next week.